Now, while Australia's east coast continues to face gas shortages, which have resulted in wholesale electricity prices spiking back above the $400 per megawatt hour limit set by the regulator AEMO, it's nothing compared with the problems right now in Europe, where the reliance on gas from Russia has made the economy highly vulnerable. This week, Russia recommenced gas supplies to Europe via the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, which had been shut down for planned maintenance. Despite assurances from Russia that it will continue the supplies, fears remain that it could be withdrawn in retaliation for sanctions after the invasion of Ukraine. It has prompted emergency action from Germany, which says it won't allow gas to be used for electricity generation. That will be saved for households and industry use. Germany already has a policy to shut down all its nuclear power plants by the end of the year. Now it will restart the use of brown coal to generate power. This week, Germany's Economy and Climate Minister Robert Habeck accused Russia of blackmailing Europe.
Wir registrieren auch zunehmend, dass Energie nicht nur
I would like to take up and reject a comment that I read today, namely the remark from the Kremlin and Gazprom that Russia is the guarantor of energy security in Europe. This is a twisting of every fact, because actually Russia is using its great power, too great a power, that we have given to Russia to blackmail Europe and Germany.
But this gas crisis is adding inflation to Europe, which prompted the central bank to this week raise its official cash rate for the first time in 11 years by 0.5% back to zero.
We are very attentive to what happens on the energy front, and in particular on the gas front, because it has an impact on electricity price, as we all know. So, most recent evolution concerning the gas supply through Nord Stream 1 in particular is obviously a factor that we take into account.
One of Europe's biggest energy suppliers is E.ON, based in Germany with operations throughout Europe and the UK. It has more than 51 million customers. Recently, E.ON signed an agreement with Andrew Forrest's Fortescue Future Industries to buy 5 million tonnes of hydrogen per year from 2030, with the supplies to start within 3 years' time.
This, of course, will be one of the largest energy agreements. We will create an employment-intensive industry in Australia and a reindustrialisation of Germany, a Germany which is strong, a Germany which continues to lead the world in advanced technology and in heavy industry, and this time with zero pollution.
By coincidence, E.ON's Chief Operating Officer Patrick Lammers was in Australia this week looking at Fortescue's operations. I caught up with him to discuss Europe's energy crisis and his aspiration for the green hydrogen contract with Fortescue. Take me to the current situation in Europe with the threat that gas supplies could be cut off from Russia. What impact is that going to have on your business customers? What impact does it have on Europe's economy?
Well, I think it's of such a magnitude. It will have a huge impact on the European economics, because everything you see around you, and it's very densely populated, and we actually have a winter still, even it's very heated now in Europe. There's a huge heat wave going on. But in winter you will have 4 to 5 to 6 months, you will have to have heating in houses, and you use a lot of gas, of course, in all sorts of industrial processes. So if there would be a gas cut, it would have a huge impact. At this point in time, we already started last year, November, seeing already a lot of volatility in the gas price, and therefore then also in coal, and then later on obviously in electricity. And that was all exacerbated obviously by the war in Ukraine. And that has a huge impact. For instance, if you look at the prices which you now see in the market, which we have to purchase for, if you pass it on fully through into our customers, you would see a 6 or 7-fold the invoice for customers.
Does it have the potential to tip Europe into recession because of the price of energy, because of, if you like, the impact of simply not being able to heat, to be able to look after people in the community?
Well, there will be demand destruction obviously as well. Because of these high prices, a lot of industries obviously will say that it's absolutely useless to produce in Europe, we can do that somewhere else. And then you will have to look, what does the government do? Different governments, so you have the EU, but you have the different local governments. a large part of the bills people get for your utility is also invested with all sorts of tax and levies. So if the governments actually put that down and then the price will come through, still will be a bit balanced, but if there will be a real price hike, obviously the buying power of, let's say, a normal family will be reduced because they will have to buy this utility, gas and electricity.
Hindsight being hindsight, was it a mistake for Europe and for Germany in particular to become so reliant on that Russian gas?
Well, I mean, in hindsight, everybody is obviously much more smart than looking forward. I mean, the ones who have vision obviously are the more courageous ones. I think obviously it was a geopolitical decision as well. Energy politics normally is real politics because it's such a big chunk of our fabric which we have in every sophisticated society. I think Europe, personally, was deeply geopolitically asleep by the fall of the wall in the 90s, and then, you know, everybody being positive, everything will be fine. While, of course, Russia is making us very dependent on it. And if you get very cheap Russian pipe gas, all other costs can be higher or inefficient. And that's, I think, now what's the bill we are paying.
Okay, so then is there any solution to this? Is there anything around the place that can replace that gas to generate the energy that's required for Europe, for your customers?
Yeah, what is happening now is that, of course, the countries are working together, not only Germany, but the Netherlands, Belgium, Denmark, Norway, and the UK. I mean, it really happens obviously in the north around the North Sea. In the south, you have Spain and Italy, which actually extract their gas from Northern Africa, where there are pipelines there. And now, obviously, there is a debottlenecking of LNG terminals. So in Zeebrugge, Rotterdam, and there will be also floating regasification units in the north of the Netherlands and north of Germany. That will pick up some of the stuff, but obviously it needs time. But we are looking at a real, let's say, near valley for the coming at least 18 months to get all of that to be replaced. Today we are waiting for the news, but yesterday I saw that Nord Stream 1 was repressured after the maintenance period. So the Russians will probably supply again between 30 and 40% of the normal volume, which normally goes to Nord Stream 1. But obviously it will be tight.
And then take me to another aspect of this, because we're talking about gas. We do the same thing here in Australia. There are gas shortages in Australia, for example, at the moment. So one of the issues is that it was always seen to be the step between coal-fired power stations for us and, sort of the renewables, the story of the renewables and their science coming through. In Germany, for example, with the ban on nuclear power stations, it was gas that was, if you like, the link between the nuclear power and the renewables in the future. But there's a gap there, isn't it? You need that gas in the middle.
Well, I mean, there is, of course, a big acceleration. I mean, Europe has been looking very much at decarbonisation and forgetting about affordability and forgetting about superior supply. So these three things, security of supply, affordability and decarbonisation, are very important. Gas should have been the bridge, and by, let's say, Russia doing the invasion in Ukraine, which is horrible, also accelerated everything forward. So in Germany now, there is a law which says you can't use gas for making electricity because we need in other parts of the economy, and we switched on back to coal-fired plants. So the bridging then is done by coal fire, but you'll be looking at this for obviously...
Which almost defeats the purpose, because the idea was to get rid of the coal-fired power stations. So therefore there's even conversation in Germany right now about allowing the nuclear power stations to remain open for longer. Do you think that will end up coming to pass?
Well, we see that debate in the press, and there's obviously different political parties talking about that. To come back to the coal, obviously that was never the idea, but you have it and you need it. So, I mean, it's a wall. I mean, it's not like something happened very distant. I understand when you live in Australia that you think it's far away, but Australia is also part of the Western world. And I learned a long time ago, if you have a hole in your boat, it doesn't matter if you're close to the hole or a bit further away, it's going down. So we have to really stuck that hole in the boat so the Western world can keep afloat, because I think that's, first of all, very important. Second, coal will be there for a while. Then I said the LNG will come as a bridge, and probably debottlenecking some of the other gas fields in the North Sea. And then obviously you'll be looking forward and accelerating all of this into hydrogen, because that's really, of course, where we need to go.
Okay, so I want to go to hydrogen because quite clearly E.ON has done a deal with Fortescue Future Industries. It will provide green hydrogen to E.ON over a long-term contract to 2030. Just explain to me, or beyond that, just explain to me how that works, because right now there's not a lot of hydrogen being produced in the world, not at commercial quantities at least anyway. What's needed to scale it up?
Well, I mean, what you have here in Australia is you have space and you have 50% more sunshine than we have in Europe, and you have also a lot of continuously reliable wind because of the southern hemisphere. So first of all you have that. So the one who builds that out and does that cleverly can actually produce hydrogen. It's not, let's say, technology which you have to invent, you have to scale it up. And that's a very different game than you have to invent an electrolyzer because it's there, or you do this via another chemical process. And then obviously the other thing is we are investigating together with FFI is, okay, how would the whole value chain work for both of us and how would transport work? And we're doing an investigation on that, and where a lot of people thought it's impossible, it's actually possible. And we've done the analysis on it, and we also, both our companies believe we can make this work. Mainly also driven obviously by these very high fossil fuel prices, which are not going to go away. And if we really would price in the cost of all those fossil fuels and the CO2, which we actually give birth to into the atmosphere, by a CO2 pricing, and especially in Europe, where there's more and more talk in Brussels about we are going to make a border and say, if you pass through and you have made somewhere else CO2, we will tax you for it as well. So then green hydrogen all of a sudden becomes very economically, and in fact, which is a good thing, it gets a real price for the energy you use, because it has been too cheap and too easy to get so much CO2 into the atmosphere, which is going to destroy the Earth in the end anyway, if we go on like this. And then, putting green hydrogen against that as a very clean technology, actually, then it has a price, but it has a very competitive price.
Patrick Lammers, many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.